Hello, this is Ian Shepherd from Production Advice and Mastering Media. This is a very quick video to talk about something that's getting a lot of attention at the moment called Mastered for iTunes. It's basically the idea that there are tracks that are specifically mastered to sound closer to the CD than they would if you just ripped the CD and encoded it yourself. And it's to call BS, because that specific claim, there's nothing wrong with the suggestion of mastering for a lossy codec, optimizing for MP3 or any other release format, but the specific claim that it sounds more like the CD, I don't buy it. And I'm going to use a technique called the null test, which is a very standard test that mastering engineers and other audio engineers use when they want to test a claim like this. I'm going to teach you how to do that. So what we have here is the CD version. I've picked a song by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. That was one of the first albums that got a lot of attention for being mastered for iTunes. So we have the CD version at the top here. We have the mastered for iTunes Store version here, and we have just an AAC encode, a normal iTunes encode with no optimization from this CD version. So the claim is that the mastered for iTunes version will sound closer to the CD than this encode, and that's what we're going to test today. First of all, I'm just going to play you a little extract of each and flick between them so you can see how much difference you can hear. The YouTube audio is not going to be perfect, but it'll give you an idea. So first of all, we have the CD version.
Live or die before I get it done, will you decide?
And I'll switch over to the mastered for iTunes version.
Take my words and turn them into signs that will survive.
And then we'll switch over to my AAC encode,
Time ago,
which was just done using the default settings in iTunes.
it's safe out there, and now you're every
Here's the CD.
like the sky. You are love, you are the lust,
Mastered for iTunes.
you are the right. And when you hear this, you know it's your
My encode.
it's your goodbye. Like I said, you know I'm almost dead, you know I'm almost gone. And when the drummer drums is gonna play my song to carry me along. Like I said, you know I'm almost dead, you know I'm almost gone. And when the boatman...
Now, I don't know how much of that you can hear, but even to me listening here, I'm not hearing a huge difference. My first impression when I listened was maybe that the mastered for iTunes version sounded a little bit softer. There was a little more bite and clarity in the CD version. I don't know whether you would agree with that. Let's get straight in and use the null test to find out what's really going on. So the idea of a null test is we add, I'm going to add it to the CD version just for clarity, a phase reverse. In Logic, I'm going to use a gain utility to do that. So that basically phase reverses the left and the right channels of this CD version. So it is now, in terms of audio signal, the exact opposite of what it is coming off of the CD. The whole waveform has just been flipped upside down. And what that means is that when we play it at the same time as exactly the same thing without the phase reverse, the two waveforms are going in opposite directions and they will cancel each other out and you will hear nothing. They null each other out, which is why it's called a null test. So two things that are identical will cancel each other out completely. In fact, let me just show you that. If I just quickly make a copy of the CD audio, so exactly the same audio, I line it up exactly and play the two at the same time, you're going to hear nothing. And you can see nothing reading on the meters over here. We have minus infinity. If I bypass that phase reverse that I put in, suddenly the music is back. Switch it in again, the two null. So that's a test for something that is exactly the same. So now if I just go back to the same setting, now I've lined up these 3 audio files. The CD and my encode are going to be lined up perfectly anyway because they're made from the same file, but we just need to check the alignment of the mastered for iTunes file because they have to be aligned to the sample in order for this phase cancellation, this null test to work. So let's just zoom in on the waveform. We'll pick a bit where we can see where I can see a musical feature, a clearly identified musical feature. So that will make the waveform easier to see when we zoom in. We're going to zoom in here. I'm going to head for this 0 crossing point there, zoom in as far as I can go, and okay, you can see that those are actually aligned perfectly. That would not be. See, there's a difference here in this waveform in the crossing point. So those waveforms are lined up, and you can see that my encode from the CD at the bottom here is fine. So now we can do the null test. We can listen. So without that phase reverse on the CD version, here's how it sounds.
We'll survive.
Now if I switch that in,
Because a long time ago I knew not to
now we're hearing the null version, and it's very interesting because it's not cancelling
say about that.
remotely closely. Now we need to be careful. We need to check the level, because if there are differences between these 2 files, they could be down to EQ, mix, or just straight level differences. If there's any difference at all between those 2 files, then the null won't work perfectly. So let's just check that the mastered for iTunes version is matched well in terms of level to the CD version. And I'm just going to do that by tweaking the level of the track up and down slowly.
I love you, are the love supreme, you are the right.
And there, as I've boosted it up by a dB, you can hear there's some more bass coming into the sound.
It's your goodbye.
So the null is less perfect. So the level was closer before. Let's take the level back down. Try that again. This time we'll take the level down. And again, I start to hear more bass as I reduce the level of the mastered for iTunes version. So that means that when the levels are equal, the match is closest. So that is the best null we're going to get. We've checked the waveforms, we've checked the levels. That is a true representation of the difference in sound between the CD and the mastered for iTunes version. Now let's listen to the difference between that and my AAC encode from the CD. Okay, let's go back. Okay, so what are we hearing? We are hearing what my instincts told me when I first tried these files. There is a bigger difference between the mastered for iTunes version and the CD sound than there is between the CD sound and a straight vanilla iTunes AAC encode from that CD. Now, I'm not saying that's a problem. You might well prefer the sound of this mastered for iTunes version, and it's entirely valid for the artist or the mastering engineer to decide to make a mastered for iTunes or mastered for MP3 or mastered for digital radio or any other format they choose sound different than the original CD and, in their opinion, better. In this case, the decision obviously has been to soften the voice a little bit. I'm hearing more edge in the voice and the drums on the CD. What is not true is to say that this sounds closer to this than this. I mean, it makes perfect sense. Software engineers spend a lot of time making AAC encoders, MP3 encoders, whatever encoder you choose, sound as close as possible to the original CD. Why should a mastering engineer using his ears be able to do a better job than that? So that's what I'm calling BS on. The best way to get an encode in your iTunes library or on your MP3 player sounding like the CD is to buy the CD and rip it. And if you buy it directly from iTunes, you're getting something that sounds different. In somebody's opinion, it sounds better. Whether you agree with that or not is up to you. I've done other videos that show that for this album, the vinyl release sounds better because it has more dynamics. It has more of the original energy of the waveform left in the sound. It's nothing to do with CD versus vinyl. It's to do with the choices that were made when the record was mastered. These are just more choices. But I'm concerned about the publicity that is saying that mastered for iTunes is necessarily closer to the sound of the CD than just using the CD and doing a straight encode, because it's not true. Okay, there you go. I hope that was interesting. Null tests are incredibly useful for cutting your way through the claims that people make about all kinds of stuff in audio. It's a very simple technique. You should be able to do it in almost any digital audio workstation. I encourage you to try it and start listening critically to the music files that you're being given and the things that people are telling you about it. If you found this useful or interesting, there's loads more like this on my website, productionadvice.co.uk. Please head over there and check it out. Give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you for the next video.